Hi everyone, my name is Silvi Costa and I'm a social media marketing internet content. Thank you very much for tuning in to our podcast today. I'm joined here by Mette Lindgren, of course, joined online that is. Mette is an IAF certified professional facilitator trained in intercultural communication, dialogue, conflict management, and facilitation. She has over 25 years of experience educating people in handling diversity, and she also works as a consultant, helping clients to handle change, often with the purpose of bridging all kinds of cultural differences. So, thank you for joining us, Meta.
Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Our topic today is going to be diversity, and we're going to focus actually a bit more on cultural diversity. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to handle that, how you can handle that as a manager, as a company. And I was thinking maybe we can begin by talking a little bit about diversity and what does that mean.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it has not been less complicated the last years, I think, and that's for the good, in my opinion. But in general, diversity is about recognizing that people are diverse. We are different. Everybody knows that, of course, but it's also about being aware of that, what that means in an everyday on an everyday basis, like at the workplace, for instance. So going from just um, accepting it or saying, okay, we're different. So also be aware, how can we handle that so we have good cooperations, good teamwork, and so on. And diversity refers to many kinds of differences. Very often we focus on culture, that we are culturally different, but generational diversity can also be gender or different kinds of genders. It can be professions, it can be religions, it can be many different things.
Right.
So that's a short version.
Right,
Mm.
right. Yeah, indeed. So it sounds like it can get quite complicated, especially if you have all these types of diversities interacting.
It can, but it's also a huge asset in any team, in any company. And I think that many companies nowadays, they have realized that, not only in terms of their workforce, that they need different kinds of backgrounds, perspectives, professions, experiences, also to be able to meet the customer, to not be biased in the way you approach your customer, but also actually to solve your tasks, whatever they are in the company. And that's of course related to the fact that we live in a globalized world. It's
Mhm.
very difficult not only to have a home market, for instance.
Right.
Very often your product are reaching out, like you have the software industry, application industry, and so on in IT. I mean, it's, yeah, like the app we're using here for this. I mean, that's for everyone.
Right.
So you need to be aware that you can not only address people who look like yourself,
Indeed.
or people who are the majority, or kind of the group which are setting the agenda, kind of on very many different agendas. Well, that was a little bit fluffy.
No, no, but I get it. I get it. No, exactly.
You have to edit that.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Right, right. So exactly. So diversity is really complex, and there are a lot of levels on which we can see diversity. But then you already started hitting on my next point that I had on my list, which was the opportunities. You already talked a little bit about that. Diversity can actually be an asset for organizations, for example, in helping them with their clients, but also with their operations inside the organization. So I'm curious, what are the things can diversity help with?
If you see to the big need today, in not only in organizations but also like on a world agenda level, for change, there's a huge need for change, and also everything is changing at a very high speed. And change means that we need to be innovative. We need to be able to solve complex tasks all the time in an ever-changing world. And it's like we cannot stop that kind of development, that things are changing. We can of course sit back and say, I don't want things to change, I want to be them as they are. but it won't help you. We have new generations coming in with new kinds of values, needs, the way they want to be treated by their leaders, the way they want to contribute, and so on. So it's like I see that the world is like in a huge stage of transition coming, and also it's already here. And I refer to of course, to the big issue of the climate change and the differences, justice differences and differences in poverty and wealth and so on. I think we are in a stage where we need to work together to solve these issues. We cannot do that alone. It's not the United States who has the answer, or the USSR, or no, you cannot say that. Russia, it's or
Right.
India. No one has one answer. We need to do that together. And to do that together, really together, it is about participation and inclusion. We need to hear all the voices, and we need to listen to different kinds of perspectives, because that's where innovation lies. And I mean, many young companies know that already. They already have like a diverse workforce, like Spotify or Mailchimp or whatever they're called. They have already discovered that, and they deal with that in a new way. I see.
Mm.
So it's needed to solve the big issues of our time, but it's also actually a very how you say, great opportunity, to be in a team, in a global team, a team with differences, diverse team, which really functions. It's so much fun. It's much more fun. It's much more innovative. It's much more developing. But it takes something to get there, of course. It's
Right.
not it's not just something you do like that. It's not done in a day to create the culture in the team, which where we can utilize those assets. It takes
Right.
something.
Right. So if I understand you correctly, it can basically be enriching. So having a lot of diversity can be enriching, and it can basically help us solve the big issues that we're facing right now globally. And of course, it can be also enriching on an individual level, because obviously it gives you a lot of perspective and helps you grow as a person. Of course, to meet people with different views on whatever topics there would be.
Hmm.
Right.
And you also know, research shows that a diverse team, which functions very well, will go to a much higher level in performance than a more homogeneous team. But if the diverse team doesn't work, it doesn't cooperate, they really suck. Sorry, my language. I mean, they're even worse than the homogeneous team.
Right.
So it means that if you are going to be really on that high level of performance, you need to work with your diversity. You need to be aware of it and be able to handle it and so on. So it's not that I want to, sort of sugarcoat that cultural differences are so wonderful and we have to live in big harmony and so on, because that's not how reality is. It's difficult. You can just look out the window and see how the world's going on. It's
Mm.
difficult with differences,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
also something that is uh, it's there. You cannot just close your eyes and imagine that we are all the same, because that's not how it is.
Right, of course, exactly. So then this kind of becomes the flip side of the coin. So this is the challenge, I suppose, right, for to diversity. Again, it has this huge potential, but we need to learn how to manage it properly.
Hmm. Yes,
Mm.
that's true.
So then let's talk a little bit more about this actually. So how could one start, or like, yeah, how does this process work? Where do you even begin to manage a diverse team?
Hmm. Um, like every team, which are going to be high performing, the psychological safety or the confidence in the team is crucial. We say that if you go into a team where people more or less look like yourself or seem like yourself, that you interpret people like, oh, they're like me. You start on a like basic level of confidence. You have a basic confidence, and this we're going to work together. It's going to be fine. But if you come into a group where you interpret whether it's true or not that they are different from yourself, because they maybe have another skin color, they talk with a different accent, they have a different kind of background, professional background, education, whatever, the the level of confidence, I'm sorry to say, but it goes down. So we start on another level. We start like in the minus. So that means that all the things you're going to do with a homogeneous team, you have to do with a diverse team, but even more. So you have to put like extra cheese on the pizza, kind of. You have to even more building the relationship, clearing expectations, being clear about what is the task and where we go and what's the mission and vision and all these things, I mean, that people know, most of us know about how to deal with a team, building a team. And being aware about your own bias, about bias being an issue, culture being an issue, maybe race being an issue, whatever issue that can be there, things that you may not know because you're biased yourself. So,
mm,
as a leader, to be able to be open minded about yourself, that you maybe be biased, but also about what can be in the group, and being courageous enough to look under the surface of the kind of, you have this like the picture with the iceberg is very common picture to show what is going on in a intercultural encounter, that you have something you see. I interpret you maybe as okay, your name, your how you look, and so on. I have an idea about who you are, but I don't know. I mean, you have a name is Silvio. I could have an interpretation that you're maybe from this country or that country, but maybe you grew up in a totally different place. Maybe you have a different culture I don't know of. So it's not about bringing differences up to the surface to make things more complicated, or to have clashes. Not at all. It's just to be, in a way, embracing them and saying, okay, so you don't like to eat this, okay, so now I know. So when I'm going to do refreshments for our next team meeting, I'm not going to put that on the table because So it's a very sort of practical and down to earth way of dealing with differences, and that takes a lot of self-awareness of the leader or the manager. Really, that's
mm,
where I start. It starts with the leader herself or himself, I think, to be also a
right.
good role model in that.
Right. You're right. So then again, where to kind of answer the question briefly, it would be where does it start? It would be the leader. So it starts with the leader, who should be open-minded and kind of basically just what you said, self-aware, looking at his own biases or her biases, and then also be courageous enough, yeah, to basically look beneath the surface. And I think it's really interesting what you mentioned. To what I, the way that I interpreted what you just said was to also look at individuals as individuals rather than group members. I thought that
Exactly.
metaphor with the iceberg was really, yeah, was really powerful in
Exactly.
visualizing that.
Yeah, because we very often, when culture comes in as an issue in a group or in an encounter between people, it comes in like I sometimes compare to a submarine, because you don't think about culture as long we have a conversation or a teamwork which just flows. You don't think about culture, but if something happens like a little conflict, it sort of flows up to the surface, and then you have, oh, it's culture, you know and then we start interpreting people from their cultural belonging or identity, which maybe is not relevant for that to solve that issue. So you can say, oh, that's because he's from India or because she's from Sweden, but maybe it has nothing to do with that. So it's very much also about having a very flexible mind. So to say, okay, let's look into culture as an issue here, but also look away from culture as an issue.
Right.
Uh, so it needs a high level of awareness in that sense as well, and also to know what is culture anyway. What does cultural identity mean to us? What does language mean? What has power to do with intercultural encounters? Because that's also an important issue here. That there very often is a dominant culture in a group. It can be like you have maybe uh, it's a leader, and maybe some other powerful people speak English as a mother tongue. So there maybe are no awareness that there can sit very, very skilled people, skilled in the sense of the task they're going to solve, have a very high level in of their profession, but they don't have the mother tongue, or they have an accent where the other people will interpret them as being not so skilled in English. You know, so
Mm,
stuff like that is very important to sort of balance, and be aware of how you facilitate also like a conversation or dialogue in the team, or how you put the team together, and how you make sure that there are this inclusion of feeling up people are feeling included, and also safe enough to say, oh, wait a minute, it goes too fast. I didn't hang along. Can we do that again, or can we do a documentation in reading so I can read it afterwards? And
mm,
I refer that to, I work with engineers in a project leader program, and it was a very intercultural group, but they were so they were very dedicated, and they were so like polite and kind. So they didn't want to talk about culture because they were afraid of offending each other. They were
Hmm.
afraid of bringing it up as it could be making things worse.
Right.
And so there was no conflicts in the group about culture, but they had like a potential that they didn't actually use because it had some consequences in the way they were organizing their teamwork, and also how they were dealing with their customers and so on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Mm.
Understand. Yeah, yeah. I think this example is really good, exactly to just kind of give people a more concrete idea. Okay, what is it that you can actually do? And indeed, this is another illustration of what leaders can do. Exactly what you said. Kind of set the game rules. So okay, know that just make sure that everyone understands that it's totally okay to speak up, to speak their mind, and that yeah, their accent, for example, just doesn't matter. And yeah, really making sure that yeah, that all the important stuff can go to surface. And I'm wondering then, what is it that team members can do to kind of help a bit in this dynamic?
Hmm. I also think it's being courageous in a sense, and being courageous enough to question norms, like, or hidden agendas, or unconscious like habits, or because I mean culture is characterized by that most of it is unconscious for us. If we are in our own culture, we don't see it. It's like fish in the water.
Right,
um, but what happens in an intercultural encounter is that you become aware of your own culture because people have different expectations to certain ways of doing things, certain ways of dealing with things, or certain or different values somehow. So in the moment where you notice, wow, there was a little clash here. I mean, why is he saying that? Or how does she think that we can do it that way? That's really weird. When you have that reaction, it means that there's a little clash here. There was something that we took for granted that was not for granted.
right,
Sometimes we say about intercultural encounters, you just have to use your common sense. But I say no, common sense doesn't exist in intercultural encounters. It's cultural sense. It's what we learned and bring with us into the meeting. So what you need to do there, as also as a team member, is to say, wait a minute, can we have a talk? Could we talk about this? I would like to have a dialogue around this. So being curious, kind in your way of asking, showing that you have a good intention, you want to have become wiser together in a dialogue, instead of saying you cannot do that and why did you say that, and I feel harassed now, because of course we have to speak up if we feel harassed, no doubt about that. But we cannot, I think, in intercultural encounters and in a good team, diverse team, all the time accuse other people for offending us. Because if we do that, we cannot have the dialogue, we cannot develop things.
right, right. Yeah,
Mm.
I think that is really really sensible advice, and I can also see how that helps exactly. So if there is some sort of like personal reaction, exactly what you said, if we feel that there's something that kind of triggers us in a sense, then we can be aware of that and then try to yeah, just bring it up in a polite way after all. And then
Mm.
exactly what you said, invite for dialogue. And I think
Mm.
this is basically a recurring theme, right? Because this is also something that leaders could do, just invite for dialogue and create this space where basically communication can be built around these topics, around these differences, and
Mm.
then from there indeed basically the team as a whole can get it to the next level and make those differences actually work for them instead of against them, basically.
Exactly. And I sometimes say I work with, I have this motto, diversity handled with care. And I think that's because we need to be caring, not afraid of bringing up differences, but caring in the sense that cultural identity is also sensitive for us. If we get pressed, if we feel that we're under pressure, and if you are the minority, you are constantly under pressure in a certain context. It can be either you or me being the minority, and in other situations we are the majority. But when you
Right,
are in the minority situation or marginalized somehow, it's sensitive. You are under pressure. It's easy that you start to defend yourself. So when we address cultural issues, which you can see it can be a problem here, we should do it with caring for the person, caring for the group, caring for, and also having this understanding that no one in this world does things which doesn't have make sense.
Mm.
No one
Right.
does that. Even the most crazy person who's really crazy for real will do things that in his or her state of mind or perspective is make sense.
Right.
So having
Right.
that approach, so this is really weird, but there must be a reason. So having this curiosity, saying, I was noticing that you did this. Why? Can you? It's interesting. Can you tell me that? And having that dialogue, because people love to speak about themselves. People love to explain their strange, if you like, quote unquote, cultural habits, or and it can really create a fantastic encounter, deep encounter between people, and create this connection that we need, because we need connection. We need to be connected, and we are connected already. So intercultural, or dealing with intercultural diversity or diversity, is about reconnecting all the time, I think, and building that, yeah, those relationships in groups, any kinds of groups, that are strong enough also to have to handle if there is a conflict, because sometimes there are conflicts. Sometimes you have values that I don't like, that I can't accept them,
Right.
and you maybe have, you say, yeah, but that's my culture. Yes, but I cannot accept that.
Mm.
And then we have
Right.
to have those difficult conversations as well. That's very, very important.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, absolutely, exactly. And then what you said, if we basically approach this with a caring perspective, then exactly, I think it makes it way easier to actually have these difficult conversations, because we know that there is so much else that actually bonds us, and then we
Mm.
can basically see, oh, hey, we disagree on this one. We really just have completely different perspectives, but hey, we're still in this together, and there's so much else that actually bonds us together, so we can basically, overcome this
Mm.
difference ultimately.
Yeah. And also to put it back to the practical perspective, because in teams, in an organization, in a company, we have a task to handle. We have something that we're going to do. We have to finish our task together. So we can also put away things that doesn't really matter. I mean, what's not my business if people want to go have, pray 3 times a day or have a cigarette 3 times a day. It's not my business, as long we can do our job. Because sometimes this goes to that everybody should be, tapping into a special kind of Christmas lunch and drinking this or eating that. And I'm a little like, I don't care what people eat. I mean, let them eat what they want to eat. As long
Right.
as they don't force me to eat it. And I don't want to force other people to eat stuff or to dress in a certain way.
Right.
And of course, that's not so easy as I say it here, because there are also some limitations on that, of course.
Mm, indeed, indeed, of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but exactly. I think that's a really, yeah, again, a really sensible and actionable point, which is, okay, look at what's really necessary, and at what differences are really relevant to that specific context.
Hmm.
Because indeed, I can imagine that, maybe someone feels a bit weird that, yeah, some person in the group has a certain habit, but then indeed, if that habit just doesn't impair your work that you do
Hmm.
together, then indeed, I think, yeah,
Hmm.
that person can work on accepting basically that the
Hmm.
habit of the other person. Yeah,
Yes.
for
Because
sure.
there's this risk, if you start to go down that road, the risk will be that it will be a fight about who has the most right or best habit or best way of doing things. It will be this fight, and we cannot. I mean, it's just like a blind road. It's better to find out exactly as you say. What do we have in common? What is needed here in this situation to make us move forward to and solve what we're going to solve, whatever that is in that situation.
Right, right, exactly, exactly.
Mm.
Mm. And then now I'm also wondering about another point. What do you think can be done at a policy level in an organization? So we kind of talked so far about what leaders can do, what individuals can do, and I'm wondering, is there anything again at the level of policy that organization can support these sort of processes?
Absolutely, I think it has to be like interconnected in the way you also mentioned it here. As all policies, it's important that they are not just rules that you put in a folder and put on the shelf, but they are rules that are being or policies that are being worked with the employees, and in every level, on the leadership level and on the employee level, so that people get the chance to make sense through dialogues, or in a participatory way of dealing with those issues. Because if you just come with 10 rules for cultural diversity. Like, be open-minded, be curious, be courageous. People were like, yeah, that's good. I'm in. But it's not the same
Right.
thing that I will start doing that, because this is about also in personal change. It's about change in your own mindset, in your behavior. That, that journey that we all go through when we start to, you know, want to change something which doesn't function in our lives or in our businesses or in our organizations. Whether that is about, gender equality, it can also be our approach to people with disabilities, anything, or the climate, whatever is about change, change in behavior. It
Right.
needs to be not only on the superficial level, it has to be from inside. You need to see the motivation. You need to understand, why do I have to change this? How does my behavioral change impact my colleague,
Mm.
my task, my how you say, the quality of my everyday work life? So if we
Right.
have a better diversity here, I will be more happy when I go to work. It will be easier for us to solve the task. We can earn more money, or we can have a greater impact, whatever we're doing.
Hmm.
So
Right.
that's very important. So it's a ground, basic, very very ground, work of transformation or change in the organization you need to do on all levels.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Right. Yeah. So basically, as a policymaker, I should start from that ground level. So really go to the yeah, basically to even the lowest levels in the hierarchy, so
Mm.
to speak, and then basically talk to the people there and be like, hey, let's talk about this and let's basically build this together, this policy.
Mm.
Mm. Right.
Yeah, and I think, or maybe you can also see that you start from both sides. That you start with the top level management. If they are in, if they are dedicated, and go, with a in front with a flag in in top. Yeah, yeah, diversity, and then, but not only them talking about it, also showing it.
Mm. Right.
I
Right.
mean, you cannot make a change in that sense if they still have, a Twitter account with homophobic, comments and so on. I mean, that's not that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But, on both level, and then, yeah, on every level, working with a dialogue.
Mm. Right.
One thing I was thinking about, conflicts,
Hmm.
intercultural conflict, because sometimes I get the question, what is the difference between a normal conflict and an intercultural conflict?
Hmm.
And in many ways they are the same. They have the same dynamic and the same way they escalate, and the same, you need to do the same thing to de-escalate. But I think one important point is that sometimes also intercultural conflicts have a tendency to jump. If you have the image of the conflict ladder,
Hmm.
because there's one step on the conflict ladder that would say that you have enemy images or something like that, your
Mm.
biases. And there's a tendency to, when you have a conflict with people from a culture that you interpret as different from your own, you will very fast jump up to this, and trying to explain, as I said earlier, it's because of their culture. And if you have that explanation, it's difficult for you, or more difficult to de-escalate the conflict, because it's like it gets stuck there. It becomes like a fight between different cultures.
Right.
And there's also a risk that you will kind of activate like historic biases or historic events. Yeah, but the Germans invaded Denmark, and it's not really relevant, with a co-worker from Germany. But if that's also being like fuel on the fire in the conflict, it's easy, because there are so many emotions there.
Right.
So there's important to be aware of the culture being a thing that you also can put away and say, okay, let's look into, as I said earlier, what's going on and who are we, and be open about, maybe if you had a hurt feeling that people said something about your culture that you got hurt, and so on, so you can sort of deal with that.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I think that's a really good point. Exactly, exactly. And then I think this also relates to the idea of identity, what you just said, in the sense that we, of course, we have so many identities as individuals, and then exactly when you enter a conflict, for instance, on culture, then that identity becomes salient, and then that kind of gets in the way of solving the actual conflict, which didn't have anything to do most likely with that. Indeed.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then in fact, you can be, if you have this high level of awareness, you can shift the focus on another identity. So let's say that we have a conflict between two people, it becomes something about race or gender or whatever. Then you could look into maybe, okay, yeah, we are maybe two different generations or two different genders or whatever, but we have a common interest in children or whatever it's about. We're working with children. We have a common interest that the children in this kindergarten have a good development, and that's what we will focus on now. So maybe we are different generations, yes, but we had the same professional background. So you find a part of the identity which you have in common, bearing in mind that we have, exactly as you say, diverse or many different identities, all of us. We are not our culture, you
Right,
can
exactly.
say, or we are not our gender, we are not our age. It's part of us.
Yeah, no, exactly, and being able to kind of take a small step back and then exactly see all this richness of identities, and then exactly whatever the identity
Yeah,
that kind of got us in trouble, so to speak, that is
yeah,
actually just one tiny slice of the whole cake, let's say.
yeah,
Mm.
exactly. It's a good image.
Right,
Yes.
indeed. Yeah,
Mm.
right. Yeah, so I feel like there is a lot to take away from here. I feel like leaders have something to learn exactly about how to manage, how to be courageous, of course, and then how to invite dialogue, and then the same for employees to just again the same idea: be courageous and be to try to reflect in the end on yourself, and then also for organizations exactly to how to design their policies around this and basically help everyone be involved in this process. Hmm. Right. Yeah, it's been a really really awesome discussion. I really think our listeners
I
are going
think
to
so
take a lot
too.
from it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
really nice to have yeah, talk about what I love so much.
Right.
Yeah, that's really my topic. So thanks
Yeah.
for that, Silvio.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being with us today. And what if people would like to learn more? Do you have some links for us that you could share where people could learn more or get in contact with you?
Mm? Yes, I have my website. It's called Lindgren Helde, which is, yeah, .com. So it's Lindgren as an author, and then HELDE. You can also try to search on emerging.earth, which is a consultancy company I am attached to
Hmm.
currently. Yes.
Awesome. Perfect.
Hey,
Well,
Sylvie here.
thanks so much for talking to us
Thanks again
today.
for
It was
tuning
really
in.
insightful.
If you want to listen to more
And
podcasts like
thank you
these,
everyone for
then don't forget to
listening,
follow
and we
us on
hope
our
to catch you
social
in our
media.
next episode.
On Facebook
Have a good
at
one.
Cool Content Coach and LinkedIn at Cool Content AB. We have a lot of articles there with tips and tricks that will help you make the most out of these dynamic times. Lastly, check our website, coolcontent.com. There you can find a lot of coaching programs, which you can join to get in contact with some of Sweden's finest coaches. Thank you very much for listening, and we hope to catch you in our next podcast. Bye for now.